History can tell us a lot as to how we can overcome a healthcare crisis of today and healthcare crises of the future. But unfortunately, in today's world, we're not allowed to talk about anything that could potentially help you overcome a viral infection unless it has to do with a pharmaceutical or getting a shot. And this is all by design. If you're somebody who practices natural medicine, well, then you're not a real doctor. Maybe you're a quack. Maybe these people just have no idea what they're talking about. They just don't have enough knowledge to talk about how beneficial medicine is to you. But the reality is that by design, due to the absolute power that these different pharmaceutical companies have over the media and even social media, well, you tend to never hear about how you can overcome a health problem naturally. Once again, this is by design. And here we are trusting the same companies that are responsible for the largest lawsuits in the history of the United States simply because of their deceit, their lies, and actually harming people. And we're trusting these very same companies to give us information as to how we can overcome the healthcare crises of today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the history of the 1918 flu pandemic and one of the herbs that was shown to help kill viruses and became very famous because it saved so many lives. Now, this article right here, repurposing of herbal medicine used for the treatment of respiratory infections to aid the control of the current pandemic. Now, in this article, they go on to talk about a very particular herb, which I'm going to focus on. This herb is Lomatium dissectum. And what they say in here is that it's a potent respiratory tract antiviral. It also is an immune stimulant, and it's also good at cutting down inflammation, modulating inflammation in the body. Now, as we look at this herb, it says it has, a lot of potential in helping control the consequences of the current pandemic. And it also says that it's been used in the past for treatment of respiratory infections, and therefore the uses of this herb is highly recommended for the treatment of the virus in this pandemic, okay? This herb is Lomatium dissectum. Now, as we pull up another paper here, and I'm specifically using scientific sources, and the reason for this is simply because, well, you know what? Even the social media, if you talk about anything other than, as I mentioned, a pharmaceutical to overcome a virus, well, you can actually have your information taken down. And this is why it's important to go to Dr. Z TV and become a member, by the way, because, I don't know about you, but I have a little bit of a problem of the United States ushering in some of the same techniques that are used in, let's say, China, so that people can't learn information as to how they can improve their health naturally. We are in a position where social media isn't allowing you to talk about alternative resources, but we're going to here, and if you want to support this kind of information, go to drztv and become a member. We'd greatly appreciate that. Now, here in this article right here, they talked about Lomatium dissectum, and it says Lomatium was highly revered by Native Americans and used for a wide variety of problems. It gained legendary status in the U.S. Southwest when the Native Americans used it during the influenza pandemic of 1917. Over here, Lomatium has been used historically by Native Americans, mostly as a treatment for respiratory illnesses. So let's break this down a little bit, okay? So Lomatium was being used by the American Indians in order to help their people overcome the flu pandemic of 1918. So when we look at viruses, you have to look at them and go, well, what do you do with these things? Viruses are unpredictable. You can't stop them with antibiotics. Some are more transmissible than others. Some are more deadly than others. Well, one of the things we could look to is a herbal antiviral, and one that is shown to be very promising throughout history. So in the 1917-1918 flu pandemic, it was wiping out thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, far more than we're seeing with the current pandemic. And when this was going on, doctors were assigned to certain regions and demographics in order to help people, right? Because at the time, we didn't have the resources available that we have today in order to help these people, right? We didn't have all the science. We didn't have communication. I mean, things were way different. It's a different world. So it's wiping out thousands of people. They put doctors in different regions in order to help, figure out how to overcome this pandemic, how to save people, what can we do, what's happening. In order to give the government good feedback, they needed these doctors to really go in and work with people and use any means possible in order to treat them and help them overcome the flu, so literally the whole population didn't die off. Dr. Ernst Krebs, he was assigned to a region that had both American Indians and just everyday people living their lives. And many people were suffering and dying from the flu pandemic. However, the American Indians weren't. And when Dr. Ernst went in to figure out why in the world were these Indians not dying like other people, how were they overcoming these issues, he went to the Indians, he studied them, and they were recovering from the sickness. And they didn't have the mortality rate that the general population had. The Indians were doing something right, but they didn't know what it was. Well, were they using a pharmaceutical? Well, absolutely not, because Indians don't use pharmaceuticals. I mean, they're people who live from the land. They believe in ancient herbs, and they hand down methods for treating health conditions throughout generations that they've found to work very well. And so the American Indians weren't using a pharmaceutical. Now, what they were using is a Lamatium dissectum, which is an herb, and it has a very powerful molecular structure that kills viruses. And they were using it to treat the respiratory illnesses, and they were having incredible success. So Dr. Ernst Krebs, he got this information, he learned from the Indians, he took it to the general population, and he was known for saving thousands of lives in San Francisco and also Carson City, Nevada, and reportedly he even won a humanitarian award for saving so many lives. What was he using? He was using the Lamatium dissectum herb that he learned about from the Indians. Since then, many universities have run studies on this, and they've determined the Lamatium dissectum to be a powerful antifungal, antiviral, let me say that again, antiviral, and also antibacterial. And now, throughout history, it's interesting, because if you just look at basically the conversations that happen around this herb, they kind of die off, right? And then all of a sudden, back in like 2003, when the SARS virus was huge, right? And everybody was really worked up about that one. Well, Lamatium dissectum, once again, became very popular, once again being talked about in the literature. And then kind of died off. And then here we are again, where it's very popular for the people who actually know about it. Now, this is something that I've used a long time. Personally, I never let my home medicine cabinet go without this stuff in it, because if I'm facing a virus, my kids, whoever in my family, it's a great natural antiviral. Now, the one I specifically use has pediarco in it, which is going to help get mucus up from the lungs. It also has quercetin in it. It has all kinds of different, it's a synergistic blend of herbs, with the main component being the Lamatium dissectum, in order to help with viral conditions in the body. So this is something that I think is very useful, very powerful, and it's interesting because there's actually been huge shortages of it right now. Many of the companies that make really good formulas of this particular herb are finding that they're having a hard time producing enough of it. I know that for us clinically, we've had a hard time maintaining our stock of it. I'll put a link in the description below to the one that I'm using. If it's available, it'll say on there you can get it. If it's not available, then I'm sorry, because we've actually struggled greatly to keep it in stock, and it's been a bit of an issue. I know it's available now, but I don't know if it'll be available by the time you see this video. So I think that it's important to have these conversations. Like I said, by design, these conversations are being muffled so that you can't learn other ways that you can protect yourself. And we have seen this. We've seen over the past 2 years, anything to do with natural health, anything to do with alternative therapies being squashed. And there's a reason for that. And so make sure that you're aware of all the different alternative things that you can use, including a historically powerful herb that has gained legendary status in the US because of how well it worked in order to save lives back in the 1918 flu pandemic. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to learn more on how you can improve your health, watch this video right here.